I'm Liza Graves, and I'm here today with Jena Thomas of Parthenon PR, a boutique lifestyle PR firm here in Nashville. And, with that, these days can come a little bit of crisis management with lifestyle PR when it comes to all things AI and photo editing and integrity. And so we're so excited because with the whole scandal, if you want to call it that, with Princess Kate and the photo editing of her family photo, I think it raises a lot of implications about other things that we all should be thinking about. So, Jena, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I always love to talk royal family gossip, so this is fun.
Royal family gossip. I have to say my first thing when this came up was, who cares? Like, am I going to say that I haven't taken one of my kids' hairs off of a Christmas photo to make it look a little better, or like this, if my hair is doing this to get rid of it? And we all know that in fashion magazines and in not all influencers, but a lot, that they are constantly editing their photos. So to me, it just came across as like, well, obviously Kate Middleton doesn't do this a lot. Therefore, she's not good at it. But there seems to be more of that line of transparency and this whole backstory, which has, she hasn't been in the public eye. So with that PR lens, when you saw this happen, this had to be interesting in your office and in your staff to talk about how should they be handling this on a PR and what are the lessons to learn for your clients and all of us through this.
Yeah, I hate to say it, when crisis things pop up, it makes for really great case studies for us to learn from other people.
Case studies and case studies.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like also in this world where we all live in kind of an altered reality to some degree, everyone's putting on their Instagram filters or whatever, you're getting that Instagram version of people's lives. There is that fine line of like, what is too much to alter and what is kind of like people expected and who cares ultimately. And I do think it was an interesting time of like, there was a lot of pressure building of these conspiracy theories are going around. And I'm sure they felt a lot of pressure to say something to show, state of her health. But gosh, it makes me think that if they had just stuck to their initial statement that she wasn't making public appearances before Easter, like we probably could have avoided this whole firestorm. So it's just kind of a weird thing where the very concerns I think the photo meant to mitigate were instead exasperated. But I think, once the damage is done, the important thing that I think always to remember in crisis scenarios, and really even in just any communication plan, is that people respond to vulnerability. Ultimately, you're talking to a person and they want to be talked to and respected and not given some kind of flat soundbite or, crafted boilerplate language. So I think while it was well-intentioned that she posted an apology afterwards, I think it kind of fell a little bit flat. I would have loved to see a little bit more vulnerability in the messaging beyond just like this whole, I'm experimenting with editing, because it didn't really feel super authentic to me about what actually happened, and the level of editing that had happened, as more and more photo people have chimed in.
It was interesting because, again, that first thought that I had was, again, who cares? But I hadn't been following the royal family drama and conspiracy theories. So I started reading this one article last night that was just like explaining more about it. And if this photo was put out to help squash that, so the royal family, of course, knows about all these conspiracy theories and the fact she didn't have a wedding ring on, like, well,
not attention to detail that you would expect.
What's going on here? And I do think that sometimes we, as business owners or as individuals, maybe we do something just to get people to stop, and we don't think it'll
feel the pressure. Yeah.
The pressure. So how do you take this and in the idea of photo editing, AI, what is real and what is not real, and take this as a lesson learned for us, again, as either business owners, you're in the PR world with, it may be a lifestyle client, which is, typically not like oh my gosh, they're going to have these huge crises, but they do, they do. It could be anything from something bad that happens at their establishment to a critique online to what if it is a photo that people realize is super photoshopped or it's AI driven and there's so much pressure right now to be able to automate and to do things faster and to lean on AI. So where's the line right now? How does this help further that conversation?
Yeah, I feel like whether it's Photoshop or AI or, I mean, gosh, there's so many different levels to this, but I think what's at risk is authenticity and even credibility, which is so critical to what we do. And so, a lot of times we're putting together crisis plans proactively and we're coming up with all these, doomsday or worst case scenario situations where we can kind of put together when we're not feeling that pressure of how would we respond in this scenario. And you can't predict everything. I mean, I don't think a single one of our crisis plans has, what if our person puts up an AI photo, although it might now, always learning from that. But I think it's important to think about it proactively. But I also think just as important as just going back to these basics of once the situation has happened, once something has happened that people are, putting you in the spotlight and in the hot seat, a whole lot can get forgiven when you kind of re-enter the human element into the conversation. I think that there's this pressure, especially from the royal family of, got to be perfect, got to have this one-dimensional princess, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you're forgetting that this is a person. And I think that, people make mistakes. That's relatable. But when people own up to them, that's respectable. And I think that, people want to see more of that real life, especially in a world where we're not really existing a whole lot with transparency and truth that hasn't been filtered or altered in some way. When you're responding to something and you're showing that vulnerability and you're showing that you can own up to something, it's important to first and foremost tell the truth. I think there's some questions right now about whether her apology, if that's what happened or not, if she was just editing or what exactly happened. So I think, first of all, tell the truth and let your constituents hear it from you first, if that's at all possible. I love it when people show that they have learned a lesson of some degree, and then they work to rebuild kind of the relationship that's at stake between them and the public. And so, trust is earned, and it's certainly not built and will definitely not rebuilt overnight. So I think that there's a lot of time that you just need to pause and think about the human element and the genuineness that you're portraying, no matter what the scenario is.
Here in Nashville, since we're both in Nashville, last year after the Michigan State shooting, there was that Vanderbilt, one of their departments put out an email just saying, we're with you, to the student body. And then it was written by ChatGPT and they didn't exclude at the bottom of it. I was like, oh my gosh, you didn't even want to put your own emotion into what this would feel like. You had to, it really hit me hard that they did this. But if they had just remembered to take that off the bottom of it, they might have gotten away with it, right? But I'm sure that that also opened up a huge discussion, I assume, on campus. Within the departments of when ChatGPT first was public, it was kind of a free for all. Then it was like, wait, what are our ethical guidelines on this? Now, I didn't see any follow up. I don't know. There might have been. It may be unfair for me to bring it up, but I think as a business owner in that moment, I was like, oh, we got to make sure, what are our ethical guidelines?
We actually had a session on this just a couple weeks ago as a team of, there's more and more rise of AI, especially in our industry. I think there's a lot of ethical values that get brought up. A decade ago, I feel like brands were all trying to figure out this nuanced social media policy. And now that's old hat. Everybody's got a social media policy, but I feel like AI is the next wave of that. And there's a lot of people watching what other brands are doing. Or the royal family's doing to kind of figure out what those best practices are and to write some of those brand standards and company policies. I think it's a well past time that we'd be doing that because you're right. Even as early as a year ago, people were getting called out for it.
With your expert PR hat on and you were advising the royal family before this statement came out, how do you respond to that?
I'm on board with the posting apology. I think that it's great to come out and to say it. I think that the verbiage would be different than what actually happened and what I would recommend. I know that this is probably so different than what the royal family is known for and what their image is. I would have loved her to have an apology that said, as a mom, authenticity is so important to me. Being genuine is so important to me. And I wish that I had done better. I had wished that I had put out a photo that showed that I wanted, of course, to put my best foot forward with my first image back. And the truth is I'm still recovering and I let that kind of get to the best of me of what I decided and what my best judgment was for what to put out. And I feel like that's so not on brand for the royal family to have that level of explanation. But But wouldn't that humanize her to a degree that I think people could relate to? Because what mom hasn't felt like, gosh, I wish I looked a little bit better in that photo.
And I feel like people who are regularly editing their photos for everyone, for the world to see, wouldn't be in that position because they're so good at doing it, right? Because when I saw that they looked in the meta history of the photo and, all these things have been changed. But again, when you're releasing a photo, you're typically at a studio that has the most amazing lighting that you don't need to edit it so much, or you have amazing photo editors who are editing photos. I know we've used photographers before and we get the photos and I'm like, wait a second, like I have a few wrinkles here. You took them all out and I'm actually
good.
I'm like looking too good. And I'm like, can you please put these back in? But sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, that was just the right amount of photo editing. I know that I had some dark circles that day and I'm so glad that they're gone. So there is a bit of expectation with photo editing, but there is also a line and it is not clear. And I think the same thing is true with some of the AI stuff of, hey, at Style Blueprint, for example, AI does not write anything that we do, but we do use AI. So how do we use it? We use it sometimes if we're trying to brainstorm an email subject line and we need a punchier subject line. Our sales team will take emails that are so long, no one's going to read them. They're so close to, I'm like, put it in chat and watch it, make it 50% shorter and start to learn how to write shorter emails. But we're starting with original content in order to do that. I don't know. How are you guys navigating?
That's a question I think of I don't know enough about AI as far as how they utilize what you're inputting. So then will your original content then be utilized somewhere down the road in some of their responses? I wonder. I don't know. But I feel like we've kind of our standards and is that we can utilize it as a tool, much like you are talking about as a brainstorm tool, but we're careful about, client confidentiality. We try not to put things in there that could, that the computer can learn and then spit out. And not that it would necessarily, but we think about these things because it is a developing technology. We still are on the earliest side of what all it can do and what it will be able to do eventually. And so utilizing it as a tool and a resource, sure. Utilizing it as your brain, absolutely not. And I think also just this kind of goes back to in your world, especially as a writer and us too, I feel like there's a lot that can get written now with ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using. But again, re-enter that human element. What are the clever, witty things that you can write that a computer will never draw the comparison to, So I think just kind of figuring out what those unique things are and honing in on that a little bit more. I think it makes it even more valuable than it once was because everybody can put together a good sentence now through the help of AI.
We encourage our writers more so than we used to. We used to say, hey, it's not all about you. It's about what you've experienced, but more from taking you out of it. And now we're like, no, put you back into it, so much. Because if you take a bite of something and it reminds you of your grandmother's on a summer day, well, there's probably other people, but now people will relate to your writing more because of that personal experience, where I think there was a little bit of time there where it felt more personal bloggy to be like that. Now we're like, no, we kind of want to lean into that part because AI can't do that. Doesn't have your memories and that connection that you're able to make.
At Art of Storytelling, I don't think it's mastered anywhere close. So I think that's such a great element to continue to bring in.
With AI deepfake video, and with voice, on your side, are you starting to think about this on a crisis management side with what happens if, even something as silly as, let's just say you had a pizza place that was your client and all of a sudden they have a tech savvy competitor who just makes us a fake video about how, they found a rat in their pizza. You know what I mean? Anything can happen. And I think now you have to start being super creative with what might come your way.
Absolutely. And I think that our the crisis plans we put together have gotten longer and longer about all these potential scenarios that are out there. Used to there was a pretty standard, here are the 5 things that you might want to be prepared for. And now it's there are 50 things that you should be prepared for and then some. And so thinking through those is absolutely part of kind of what we've started doing with crisis. And also I think having some understanding about having a level of trust with your client too, I think is so valuable, because just taking it down a level of like, there's a responsibility as a PR professional to monitor photo credits, to be able to send those in to when we're working with media, understanding kind of the origin of your assets. You have to also be able to trust your clients that we have accurate information. And I do think you're right. There's the competitor angle too, of like, you've got to not only trust your clients, but you got to be ready for the competitor to do something crazy.
I know surely that wouldn't happen, but I think that all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more of a, well, let's just be prepared of the what if, because if it's a 1 out of 1,000, eventually it's going to happen, right? And you just want to be able to realize, I guess just the awareness of that is the first thing to realize.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of a real world example of that it wasn't AI or a deep fake or anything. It was actually a clever, cute video that a consumer put together from a restaurant that we work with. And she was doing kind of a funny thing. I won't give away too many of the details here, but was doing kind of a funny thing that made it look like this restaurant had delivered their food upside down. And it was one of those things we watched it and we're like, what is our response here? Because like that did not happen. Like we guarantee that did not happen. And we ultimately decided, it's pretty obvious in the video that was staged, and that there was nothing that needed to happen further than that. But yeah, I feel like there's scenarios, whether it's competitor, whether it's just somebody on social media wanting to go a viral video. I mean, there are things that might happen, that the scenarios are endless at this point of what we have to be prepared for.
I was speaking with someone who has a lot of different media assets, not in this area, but they were very prideful over the fact that almost all of their writing right now is just press releases that they are putting into, I'm not saying it's ChatGPT, it's probably something else, just to rewrite it. And they just, slab up all these different articles, and that even some of their photography is all AI now. Like they're a big company. I worry being in the media business because all of our stuff is accurate and all of our stuff is from people, and our margins are very slim, and media continues to get, slimmer and slimmer margins, but that pressure, that's out there to just cut corners, and you can see how it's happening. And I know that there's other industries out there, and I assume that you all feel some of that pressure too.
Absolutely. And I think that it's very easy to get caught up into, work faster, work smarter, have all these assets and get caught up in that. We talk a lot about at our agency about keeping relations in the center of public relations. And so I think ultimately, ethically, morally, that's going to continue to be our stance of like, I would not be prideful about that. I would be embarrassed, quite frankly, to have too much done by a computer, because I think that our people are talented. I think that we have fun things to tell, great stories and ways to put it, that I ultimately think that over time, that's going to become more and more unique, more craveable, in my opinion, than some of this just computer generated stuff that's hot right now.
I know it's funny because we're both, both kind of on the same side of creativity and loving creatives and loving all of that. But I know a lot of people in different businesses that are just loving what they can produce right now and creating massive amounts of content on their websites. They're like, oh, I did this weekend. And I'm like, but is it accurate? Is it true? I don't know. All right. One last question for you with TikTok, which is another hot topic right now, right? So how are you helping your clients navigate where to spend their time and money with the possibility of the platform going away or dramatically changing? A little different topic, but while we're talking.
Yeah, but it's all hot topic right now in our office for sure. Everything we do, we're big on, we do modern methods with a traditional foundation. And so TikTok is one of those modern methods. We certainly utilize it. It's definitely has impact in what we do. It going away would certainly have impact in what we do. But when you go back to the basics and you go back to that traditional foundation, there's so many things that don't change. Knowing who your audience is, knowing what your key messages are, what is the story you have to tell. Those are going to be foundational regardless of what platform you are utilizing. In my career, it's been everything from MySpace, not to date myself, all the way, Twitter, X/Instagram, all the different things. I think regardless of the platform, the functionality of the platform is going to change. Think about what Instagram was and what it is now. That has shifted. And then new platforms are going to come out and gain popularity over time. So I think that this is just more than ever a time to really emphasize the importance of continuing continually working to be nimble and be able to pivot to reach your goals and to reach your audience and to make sure you're telling your story authentically. Our approach just continues to be the same of we're trying to stay abreast of these changing landscapes, but also just keep those goals at the forefront and stay nimble in how we're going to actually go about telling the story. We're going to tell the same story. We just got to figure out how to tell it a little differently, right?
While we're talking about, Photoshop and fake and not fake. So, I've got my background. It's blurred here and I'm just in front of a window, but you have a beautiful background. And I think at this point, we all know like that's normal for Zoom to have a fake background, and that is okay in life. So explain to me that background, where you are and how that is different than what we're talking about.
It's funny. It is kind of a standard of what people will expect now. And you can probably tell as I move around, my head gets a little blurry around the edges. So it's very obvious that it's not exactly where I am. But funnily enough, I talking about authenticity. This is an image of the co-working space that I'm currently in.
That's a Mullen?
The Mullen in Wedgwood, Houston. Great spot. Beautiful spot. This is a true image from it, but from the Mullen. But I'm in a phone booth. And so it's a gray fuzzy background. And this is, not as interesting as what actually I can see, which is more of this vibe that you're seeing behind me. So it's a funny mix between reality and fake, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. But I do think that people are used to that right now. And it's almost entertainment now, like what your background is. I know that like at work, like during the holidays, we'll all put like different funny holiday backgrounds and all of that kind of stuff up. But I have had at times someone try to tell me like it's their background, like this is like their house. I've had that happen. And I'm like, do you not know that it's like super obvious that it's, and it's so weird when that happens. You're like, okay, I need to get off this call because you don't.
Yeah, I'm not trying to hide. This is not real. It is real, but it's not currently behind me.
Yeah. No, yeah, I know that is a beautiful, that is like the prettiest co-working spot. All right. Well, thank you. And then one last thing before you leave, I know that you all have clients in Nashville and in Charlotte. Are those your two major markets right now? Or
those are two major markets. We definitely have clients that are based here in Nashville that maybe have other locations throughout the Southeast. So we work in those markets quite a bit. But yeah, a lot of our business here in Nashville and also in Charlotte.
All right. Thank you so much. And I know we learned a lot today, and we'll just keep watching the unfolding and drama, right?
100%. Absolutely. Thanks for having me
so much.
Appreciate it.